Cool. We'll get rocking and rolling. Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to watch another Tom Ferry episode, and in this episode, he talks about, some really good advice that he can give agents in our current market. Obviously, things have changed over the last couple of years, and this advice really, gives you motivation and help you adjust to the current circumstances and market changes. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So we'll open it up here for a discussion. Uncle Tim, if you want to kick us off, the first thing that comes to my mind is the class we used to run with Donna Fleetwood, discovering your why, and the dream boards we used to put together. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, the why thing is definitely important. There are a lot of people that are struggling. There's a lot of people that are doing very well right now, but there's also a lot of people that are very struggling very hard right now with business. And if your back is up against the wall and you are struggling, you have to become more disciplined, like we talked about a couple weeks ago. And that all starts with your morning schedule. Okay. So if your why is to get out of this rut that you might be in, it's going to require discipline. Whether that's Mike Ferry used to talk about when he worked at his in his own home, he would get dressed, put his shoes on, put his suit and tie on, and go to the other room and go to work. Or you get dressed and you come to the office and go to work. But it is going to require that at least to stick to the morning schedule. It's going to require that you get up, come to the office, wherever your office might be, and put the time in, put the effort in, and make the contacts to get yourself out of any sort of rut that you're in. If you're not in a rut and you're doing well and you want more, then again, it's the same discipline. You've got to get to work, put 8 to 10 hours a day in. And if you're not putting 8 to 10 hours a day in and you're wondering why you're not getting further ahead, it's because you're not putting the effort in. Look, this business is harder now than it's ever been. I've had a lot of people tell me recently how difficult it is to get a deal to closing. It's not just difficult to get it to closing, it's difficult to win a deal if you're in competition. And if you're in competition and you're working buyers and not sellers, reach out to Kong, reach out to Brooks, reach out to myself. Before you submit that offer, run it past us. Let us take a look at it. Let us try to figure out what we think the competitive edge would be for you to win. Because if you are putting in these efforts to get to your why, you don't want to put them in and lose. So at least reach out to us. Kong, what do you think about the whys and if your back's up against the wall, what do you got to do to get yourself out of it?
Yeah. The this video was really the part where he says roll up your sleeve market. It's back to basics, right? We're seeing a lot more contingencies that maybe agents on the other side that you're dealing with or yourself have not dealt with in a while, and it's complicated, right? Um, Things like solar panels, um, sales of other property, right? We're seeing more of that, inspections, negotiations. So if you have any questions in regards to that, please come upstairs or give me a call and we'll talk through it. It's better to talk through it first than deal with it after the fact, right? After the property's settled or it's too late further down, 30 days later, and we have a property that still hasn't sold in order for your property to sell. So the quicker you react to things, the better and smoother the transaction will go.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that might be a call we need to have with regards to solar panels too, because It's happening more and more where people have gotten themselves into situations where they've put solar panels on their home. And in the case that you're just bringing up, we ended up having a listing that was priced at $450,000. The problem was it's not just 450. The new buyer needed to assume a $36,000 debt for the solar panels at almost $200 a month, which would take 25 years to pay off these solar panels. So you're not just selling the house for whatever price you get for it. You've got to get the next buyer to pay that off, or you, the seller, has to pay it off. So it becomes a problem. And now that's just step one of the problem. Now, what do? Now that the home's under contract, now we got to, hopefully we have a contingency that's subject to the buyers taking over this lease. Do we have one of those, Con?
Yes.
Okay. And then, we've got to get the paperwork in place for them to change responsibility over to that thing. So, you know, in this particular case, like Tom Ferry said, your back's up against the wall. You've got to get through this problem in order to get to settlement. So when your back's up against the wall, roll your sleeves up, dig in, don't hide from it, and get the job done. Yep. Brent, you want to speak at all in reference to your back's up against the wall? You got a job to do, and how do you have the determination and the discipline to get the job done?
Yeah, I mean, again, it all goes back to the basics. I mean, every one of us on this call that I see has been in the business for many years. So we've all know what to do. Sometimes we just get in our own way and we make up every excuse in the book for the reasons why we don't want to do it, or we want to find an easier way. But, in this world, as we all know, there's nothing easy. There's no easy pill. There's no easy solution. There's no easy way. We just have to, just like Nike, just do it. And again, we all know what that is. We just got to get out of our own way and just get back to the basics. And yep, just like Kong said and Tom Ferry said, roll up your sleeves and do it. Period.
And as far as getting back to the basics, when I think about you bringing something like that up, it goes back to, all right, what do I do? What do I do this morning? Okay. I need to roll my sleeves up. My back's against the wall. I need to get some sales going here. What do I do? Well, what you need to do is work your database. You've got to, your database is your pot of gold. Your database is where you're going to get your business from. Hopefully you have one. If you don't have one and you don't have any business, then you certainly have enough time to create the database and build the database and work on the database. So the database is what is most important. Getting those touches, making those phone calls, writing them those notes, stopping by and visiting them, holding a client appreciation event, or getting involved in one of our client appreciation events. But work your database. That's where your business is going to come from, because either those folks or they'll know somebody that wants to buy and sell. And in order for you to get the next client, you got to work that database. So to me, that's what's most important about getting back to the basics like you're talking about. And what do you do going to work? Roll your sleeves up, make those phone calls. Yep. Bob Hubler, your business is appears to be evolving again in repos coming back on the market. And you've got to get involved with, unfortunately, helping those agents that aren't familiar with the process, because those properties haven't been around for a while. What do you think the solution is to solving that problem? Because you're going to have lots of headaches with people that have never been through a repo, and now all of a sudden they're going to sell one because these things are on the market?
Well, the hardest thing is I try to put out as much information as I can in the agent remarks section. And some of these agents, newer agents, like to work off of these things. And they can't get the agent remarks section. This is my phone. And they're sitting there, they're using House Snap. They don't get the agent remarks section. And I talk to agents all the time. Did you see the agent remarks section? Some of them don't even know what it is. And then either that or like, no, I just call the listing agents when I have questions. And I'm like, well, why don't you go back and read the agent remarks section, and I put information out there for you, and then send me an email when you after you've read it if you have any more questions. But with these bank foreclosures, other things that people are doing, they're sending in just screenshots of their investors' bank accounts and stuff. The banks are not accepting that. They want to see a full scanned bank statement. I think the more, just like on any other transaction, if you can put all the information correct, every I dotted, every T crossed, is going to help get your offer to the finish line. Agents are not providing all of the information that's requested, and some of the agents are not even putting any documentation into these portals. I would say probably 75% of all the foreclosures have their own portal to send in the offers. There's about 25% of them that we have to manually input them into, even though that I have access to a portal, they don't have an offer link portal. We have that, but I mean, over the weekend, I was flabbergasted that because I put it in there, okay, the technology fee that a bank is charging if you have a winning bid was $200. And then lately they've been putting in there plus tax. So I put in there $200 plus tax. And an agent's like, well, how much is the tax? I'm like, if you go to the store and you buy something for $200, what are you expecting to pay with the tax? I said, it's no different. I mean, some I don't know where these people even got a license. I mean, if you can't sit there and think, it's just like, okay, you know what your commission is, but you can't calculate the tax. It's the same thing. It's very frustrating. But and the other thing is that with these portals, one of these agents, because we had 21 days before they'll look at one of the offers, and an agent put in an offer, and they kept on saying, when am I getting a response? I said, well, we're not there yet with the time, because what people have to understand is that like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they're selling when they originated these products that there's back end information in there that if they foreclose on a property and they put it out there for sale, they have that first look period. And a lot of these banks, they're hedge funds that we're working with. They have the same rules to sell these properties. So even though that they bought it, took over the paper from Freddie Mac or whomever, they have the same restrictions and guidelines that if Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac held it and then sold it, meaning basically they have to offer a 21-day marketing first look period. And this agent kept on over the weekend, 3, 4 emails constantly. It's like, one, the banks aren't working on the weekends. They're people, they work like bankers hours. So, at 5 o'clock deadline on a Friday, you're not going to get anybody till probably noontime on Monday if you submit an offer or submit anything. But the agent's like, well, we want to get a response. And I'm like, well, did you read the agent remarks section where they have this marketing period? Yes. And they go, well, my investor doesn't want to wait. I said, you have two choices. You either sit and wait or you withdraw the offer. So about an hour later, we got that withdrawal. And it's probably like it's for the best. But I tried to put out as much information as I have on hand have the agents to be able to talk to their buyers, because their buyers end up well, I can't get an answer from my agent, so I'm calling you directly. So I don't want that. I don't want to interfere with whatever they've talked to with their buyer and everything. But some of these agents are telling their buyers, it's pretty much insane. But I try to put out as much information as I have, but sometimes too, they're not putting the information out to me to relay to the agents.
And the fact that you just brought up that next to last sentence of what these agents are telling their buyers is, what did you say? It's what?
Well, it's they're not
I
reading
forget
the
the word you
information
used.
that they have at hand, and that because I had to put in, I think I put in one because all the time people are like, well, how many offers you have? How many offers you have? It's like, it doesn't matter how many offers I have. It just that if there is more, what an agent needs to know, if there is more than one offer and it comes up to when they're allowed to respond to an offer, they're going to send all of the offers at hand that they have. They're going to send them out for highest and best, and they will be notified because they sent the offer in directly to the bank, and the bank is going to respond to them directly, and they're going to ask for the highest and best. And then here's another funny part of that. An agent's like, well, I got that, but I didn't, my buyer wasn't changing any of the information. Well, did you relay that back when you got notified of your highest and best? Well, no. Well, because a lot of times if you have 10 or 15 offers in the system, sometimes the asset managers are telling me, make sure everybody responds. Make sure you call all the agents. And then when you call the agents and everything else, no, my buyer's staying put. Well, you need to go in there and respond that the buyer's not making any changes to their offer because they are part of the problem with slowing up the process to getting everything responded to. So there's a lot of things that a lot of people think, oh, it's easy selling bank foreclosures. They don't see all the stuff that I do on the back end, and Matt helps me out, and other people help me out, but I always sit there and say I make it look too easy because we're on top of everything with the process because you know we we're on it 24/7 trying to get things done, but sometimes some agents can't even help themselves, um, with any of the process.
So where I was going with that was when you said we got to be careful with what some of these agents are saying to their clients, leads me into the next segment of the call that I wanted to go over, which was the PAR email that we got yesterday. And Kong, if you can lead into that, because when you and I spoke yesterday afternoon, you kind of said the exact same thing Bob Hubler just said, is if you remember, about what agents say to their clients. And if you could talk a little bit about that PAR form and what scares you the most about what agents do say to their clients, which is what Bob was saying. Some of these things that they're saying to these people are crazy, but we've got to be careful, very careful what we say to our clients. So if you want to lead in and tell us about that and the article.
Yeah, there was an article that was sent out. I'm not sure. Brooks, do you happen to have it up that you can share the screen or?
Yeah, I do. Give me a
Okay.
second.
But these articles from PAR and the legal column that Jim Goldsmith writes, they're very good reading. If you're not getting these emails, let me know because we can contact PAR and make sure that you're getting them. Okay. But yesterday's email was talking about what was an offer, what's an acceptance of a contract. We can read through it real quick. What's an offer? The first paragraph, Brooks.
Yeah.
What's up with that offer? So one of the most stressful moments of a transaction can be right at the start. In that time between when a buyer submits an offer and you're the buyer agent, you're waiting, right? It's stressful. And when they hear back from the seller about whether it's accepted, rejected, or counter, casual words and careless practice can create chaos and confusion over the status of an offer. So here are a few basic tips to keep that to a minimum. Okay. What's the law? So there's three parts. Okay. Offer, acceptance, and delivery. Basic contract law says that the steps to a binding real estate agreement includes the buyer making an offer, which generally needs to be in writing, right, for a real estate transaction. Acceptance of that offer by the seller, again, generally in writing, and then return delivery of the accepted offer to the buyer. If you're missing one of those steps, then there may not be a valid contract. Okay. So remember, acceptance, offer, acceptance, delivery. Was that an offer? Okay. In a fast-moving market, buyer agents might contact a listing agent with, let's call it, some information about what their buyer might be willing to do to buy the property. It might be a phone call that ends with, my client will be submitting a full price offer this afternoon. Or a text that asks, would the seller take X amount? Okay. Well, that's the sort of information a listing agent should be sharing with the seller to ensure that the client is aware of what's happening with their property. These communications don't meet the legal description of an offer because they don't contain all the necessary terms and conditions of the proposed transaction, such as any contingencies, what's the financing, inspections, settlement date, settlement acceptance date by, that type of thing. So even if a listing agent or seller responds with something positive about the communication, it can't be a contract if there was never a real offer in the first place. If a buyer wants to enter negotiations for a property, the way to do that right is to prepare a full written offer. Okay. So acceptance, beware text messages, emails, and calls. Now, assume the buyer submits a full written offer, but now it's the listing agents responding with, let's call it, some information about what their seller might be willing to agree to in order to sell the property. Maybe there's a phone call that ends with the listing agent saying, just send over the change we discussed and the seller will sign. Or they text with, we'll sign in the evening. Remember that contract law requires acceptance of a contract and that the real estate contracts are required to be in writing. Okay. Until the seller signs, there's no contract. The listing agent sort of agreeing via text, okay, or email or phone is not probably enough to establish a contract. Okay. If buyers really want to try and argue that a promise from the agent, who isn't even a party to the contract, was a valid contract, they need to talk to an attorney ASAP. But it's unlikely to be successful unless there's some way to show some sort of bad faith. Delivery. A fair number of calls to the hotline involved negotiations where there was a valid written offer that the seller actually signed, but after signing, the seller changed their mind and decided to tear up, reject the offer, usually to take another one that they received in the meantime, a better offer. Just remember that the third element is delivery of the accepted contract back to the buyer. So if the change of heart comes before delivery, there may not be a contract after all. Okay, so if there's no delivery, there's no contract. But again, careless messaging could create issues for the parties here, mainly through us, the agents. If a listing agent conveys firm information that an offer has been signed, it's possible, and they have it italicized, possible, that a court might interpret that as constructive delivery. And the clearer the communication, the more risk there is. So here's an example. Seller loved the offer, isn't delivering. Texting a photo of the seller signing a piece of paper with a message that says, we'll drop it off in an hour, might be constructed delivery. Or looking at another common scenario, if a document is e-sign, right? We all do DocuSign, and a receipt is automatically sent to the other party, that's probably going to be sufficient delivery because the proof of signature is delivered, even if the actual document might not have been received. So I know in DocuSign you can actually have a chain of recipients, right? Your client signs it, and then after they sign it, it gets automatically emailed to the other agent, right? As practice, I generally don't do that. I like to get it, look it over one last time before I send it to the other agent, and then just in an email send it to them, outlining the terms of the deal again and just important dates to remember. So if you're just sending it automatically like that, just be careful. Okay, that's exactly what it's talking about right there. Bonus, paper trails. These questions almost always involves one party or the other wondering how to prove their client that an offer or counteroffer was actually presented. Standard practice 1.7 and 1.8 states that upon a written request, the agent shall provide a written affirmation that the offer or counteroffer was presented. PAR has a broker's request for affirmation. It's the BRFA form, which allows brokers to request a written response as to when the offer was submitted, satisfying the presentation of the offer. Some brokers or agents have adopted a policy of always submitting the BRFA, or you could always use it if there's a concern just in a specific transaction. Remember that failure to return the form is a potential ethics violation in itself, even if the offer was actually submitted. So if you see the form, be sure to fill it out and return it. So has anybody ever used that form? It's actually a very good form when you're in competing offers. Whenever I have clients, sellers come in to go over multiple offers, I'll have the buyer agent, I'll ask them if they want a proof to send me the BFA form, fill it out, and I'll have the seller sign it. Okay. I don't ever fill out the actual form. I just have the seller sign it, because within the form it asks, it states, the deal, the offer, how much it was, all the terms in it. So as a listing agent, I'll have my client sign it, but I'm not going to fill out that info, because if I miss something, then the buyer agent could come back to me and say, hey, you missed this. It was not contingent on this, or you miswrote something, so you might have misrepresented this offer. So if a buyer agent wants my seller to sign it, they can fill it out. I'll have them sign it. Okay. Just a
And
bit of
Con,
advice
if you
there.
don't mind me jumping in here for a second, I
Yeah.
think that that's a really important form to use these days.
Mhm.
I just fielded a call from an agent this weekend who had lost a second opportunity to buy a house. Both times the buyer lost out in multiple offer situations. The offers were both accepted by the same company on an in-house transaction, and there were no co-brokes involved. And now the buyer is leery of whether or not this agency is presenting these multiple offers. So if you submit your offer with that form, then like you said, it's an ethics violation if they don't return it filled out and rejected, so that you can prove to your buyer that that their offer was submitted and reviewed and rejected by the seller. So I just think it's a good idea as we're just talking about that form.
Brooks, can I share a screen real quick? Can you unshare so I can just share it real quick? I actually have the form up because I was reading it earlier. Everybody see it?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the BRFA form. So at the top again, the necessary parties, property involved. This is the part where I said, if a buyer agent wants it filled out, make them fill this part out in the middle from lines 7 through 13. Okay. And then this is actually two forms in one. One is for the request of a seller, right? And then the bottom portion is for a written request for presentation of a counteroffer. Okay. So that's the form that this article is talking about.
Is there, if you can scroll up on it though, Kong,
Yeah.
is there a box that says on there that they, I'm just trying to look at those boxes, that they reviewed it and they're not
Yeah,
accepted?
the offer, line 18 here, Tim, the offer described above was submitted to their client, or the property is subject to a previously executed agreement, or the client has waived in writing the right to receive further offers.
So what do they check off? Just the top one, or?
Depends on what the scenario is.
So you could check off more than one. The offer was described, was submitted to their client, and the client has waived in writing the right to receive further offers. You know,
Right.
showing that they're done.
Yep.
Does the client sign that at all, or is that just the other agents?
Is the seller signing it, I guess?
Just
Right.
the agent, I think.
No, actually, it's the agent signing it.
Wonder why they don't-
May I ask a question?
Yeah, Jim.
I've used this forum before, but the other thing I routinely do is if I present multiple offers, I always put them on that spreadsheet for them, the MOS, and then I have the seller sign off on that form and I keep it in the file. So I have that also, I think, as proof if something were to go awry. Is that a good idea? It doesn't hurt to do that, correct?
No, it doesn't at all.
Okay, okay,
Yeah. I always have I give them a copy too, the seller.
okay.
I've had some instances where I was on the buyer side and the list agent through their seller allowed them to just send that spreadsheet over to me and I can see all the other offers. Which is kind of an interesting scenario, but
Yeah.
Can't argue with it then.
Yeah, but Colin, like with this form in that scenario that Tim had with those people, again, it only shows that the agent saw it. Where's the proof that it said that the seller?
Yeah, I'm just
had
looking at this
done it?
now.
I mean,
At one time there was a spot for the seller to sign. They must have, I'm not sure if they changed this form recently. I mean, it's been since like
22, it says.
22.
Because, I used to write across the top of my contract rejected and then have the seller sign
Yeah,
it.
you can do that too. So
I think there is another form because I recently had it from an agent that we sent back and my seller had to sign it. So unless they got rid of that form altogether, but it wasn't 2 years ago or 3 years ago when that came in.
Okay. We'll have to look for that, because, I mean, the PAR just put that out there about this form, and I don't think that it's adequate.
yeah. I just looked it up because of the article that was sent out.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brooks, can you put that article back up too?
Mhm. Because when you get to the end of that article, it's just really be cautious of what you say to your buyers.
Yeah, the last part of this is pretty much summarizes everything here. What not to say. So the lesson here is pretty simple. First, if it's not in writing, signed by the relevant parties and in your hands, you should start out with the assumption that it's not a contract. Second, and it's in all caps here, so it's pretty important. Stop making promises on behalf of your clients. The vast majority of the scenarios we see could have been avoided with more careful communications, more careful wording. On the seller side, this looks good, I'll present it tonight, is better than saying, I'm sure the seller will take it. If they sign tonight, I'll let you know first thing in the morning, is better than we accept and I'll have the seller sign tonight. On the buyer side, telling the buyer client that the listing agent says it looks good, I'll let you know as soon as I hear whether they sign it, is better than you got the house. We just have to wait for the final signatures. Okay. Again, just words. It's very important. Constant and open communication is a huge part of an effective real estate transaction. And there's absolutely a place for quick text and casual updates. But contract law is contract law. So be sure to write it all down for real and not rely on shorthand or take the place of a full agreement. Okay. So pretty much the same thing we always stress here, communications. Communicate. Any final thoughts, Tim?
Nope, I think that's it. Brooks, what do you think? Anything else to add to the call about back up against the wall, your why,
Yeah,
being
no,
careful to say, you know?
it was a great call. Both topics are very important. Um, if you don't have one of those vision boards, maybe we can put together a workshop because that's something we did a while back and I still have it behind me. And some of the goals were stretch goals, so it's good to keep it up. But every day I come in to the office, it's right there and a visual reminder of why I come to work every day and do what I do. So I think maybe we could do one of those workshops again and do some vision boards and put our goals up there to give us some accountability. On the legal column stuff, I love those articles. Like Kong said, if you're not getting them, reach out to us and we'll make sure we get you connected with those because they're situational stuff that's happening and calls they get on the hotline and they're very appropriate to remind us what we should be doing and paying attention to in current marketplace. And I really enjoy reading them, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same.
I just
Okay.
pulled up the PAR form. Morgan, this is the one, SRP, seller's reply to purchase offer.
Yes, that's yes, that's the
Yep,
one
this is the one where the seller has to sign it.
So that's called the SRP. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I would probably use this
Absolutely.
instead of what PAR just sent. So
Yeah, I don't know why PAR would want to confuse the issue. I think that other form was very confusing to me when it was
well,
oral.
it puts it on the hand of the agents, and it's like,
Yeah.
do you trust the agent? Then they present it.
Well,
That's
and
the
this one
point
actually
of sending
says
us out to make sure the seller actually saw it.
this one actually says accepted or rejected. That other one didn't. So that's why I
Yeah.
was like, it wasn't very clear. It was kind of more vague. Where this
Right.
one just says flat out like their offer was rejected.
I agree.
I think the article was pertaining to the counteroffer scenario. This one's a blanket first offer, but if you get into multiple counters, you can use that form as well.
Right. And again, I would, if you are on the listing side, the seller side, have the only thing you should fill out is number 15, line 15, rejected or accepted, and the seller signed. Don't fill out that middle part because if you make one mistake, you know that buyer agent's going to be on you.
Yep. Sounds good. All right, guys, thank you very much. Brooks, any final comments?
No,
Otherwise,
thank you guys
we'll stop
for
today.
a great call and a great turnout. We'll see everyone next week.
Yep, we'll see you. Bye-bye.